Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be discussing Kuroe and the Garden of Feminine Pleasures by Chifuyu. Before we get started, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled in this manga, go ahead and click off now. No worries, I'll catch you next time. For those of you left behind, let's go over some content warnings. There may be references to drugging, sextortion, gender bending, non-con and or dubcon, stalking, age gap, misgendering, blood, violence, BDSM, blood play, death, obsession, mentions of teen pregnancy, child neglect, child abandonment, child abuse, being orphaned, bullying, PTSD, implied sex work, attempted rape, torture, exhibitionism, and mafia and or gang activity, as these things do appear in the manga. But if that's all good with you, let's go and get started. As always, let's start with synopsis. Sonogi Ida woke up after a night out drinking in a shocking predicament. He has a vagina. Thankfully, he still has all his other parts too, but that's a small comfort during this horrifying discovery. What's worse is that Sonogi doesn't have insurance, so he can't even afford to go to the doctor to get it checked out. Desperate for an outlet and anyone to confide in who can help, Sonogi goes into work at the host club and asks his boss if he knows anyone with medical knowledge he could talk to. As it turns out, the boss recommends the #1 host of the club, Kuroe. While Sonogi's not convinced Kuroe can actually help, he has nowhere else to go and asks Kuroe to meet with him in private. After disclosing his current predicament, Kuroe talks Sonogi into showing him his new body part. While all Kuroe does is humiliate and tease Sonogi, as well as blackmail him with his new secret, Kuroe does have some information about what's going on with Sonogi's body. There is an illegal drug going around that gives the person who takes it the opposite sex genitals. Thankfully, it isn't permanent, but it won't go away in less than a month. Relieved that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, Sonogi is comforted, except that now he's forced into Kuroe's servitude in exchange for keeping his secret. Can Sonogi withstand Kuroe's sadistic, womanizing tendencies? First off, I'll go ahead and say it, Chifuyu's art style is ugly. Everyone looks like an alien with wildly narrow chins, super wide heads, and very wide eyes on top of that. Their noses are also usually just single lines in the middle of their faces. It's super unattractive. But having read a couple of Chifuyu series at this point, I actually kind of like it. It's so unique that it's immediately recognizable, and while it is ugly, there are actually some very pretty panels. I also have to say how impressive it is for this to have such a unique style with such distinct facial features, but to have very few issues with same face syndrome, at least in this series. If you're very picky about your art, you'll probably hate this, but I have to admit it, Chifuyu has really won me over. Something else that would probably have usually either turned me off or scared me off is the premise. One of the things I hate in BL is when the bottom is referred to as a woman just because they're a bottom. This takes it to the next level since Sonogi grows a vagina between his penis and balls and his asshole. That does not mean Sonogi is a woman, but this gives Kuroe in his own mind the right to call Sonogi a woman over and over and over again. I totally understand it's due to the premise and is meant to be teasing and even humiliating for the sake of titillation, but I hate it all the same. It just, for me, reinforces the idea that being a bottom means being a woman, and I just don't like that personally. I also really hate the word pussy, and that's used about 1 million times. However, as much as I despise a lot of the sexy time because of all those preferences I have, I felt like this might have awakened a kink in me. There's a portion of this where Kuroe is once again teasing and humiliating Sonogi, but he threatens to impregnate him. I'm a huge fan of male pregnancy, and while that doesn't happen in this particular work, something about that dirty talk spoke to me, and I despise dirty talk. I'm not sure what that says about me, but I liked the idea of it all. I also enjoyed that Sonogi ended up having his period, which prompted an arc in Kuroe's character that you really don't expect based on his cruelty prior. He exposes a more soft and vulnerable side, taking care of Sonogi during this time. It really humanized Kuroe and allowed for a reprieve from the sex for some story development, which was a nice change of pace and gave more depth to a series that was beginning to look like nothing more than a smut fest. Not that I would complain if it were, but I'm always here for some substance with my smut. On the topic of the story, what story there is very dark and painful, which is expected when you've got a character like Kuroe who's fine with women stabbing and cutting him. But there's a short moment at the end where Kuroe sees Sonogi smile, a stunning panel by the way, and he recalls the neighbor who gave him a reprieve during his lonely and cruel childhood. As it turns out, it's revealed to be Sonogi's mother, and we see her pregnant with Sonogi, and eventually we see baby Sonogi. Little Kuroe played with the baby and told him to live a good life, even though he was leaving and wouldn't be able to see him anymore. That little segment, while not necessarily all that unique or groundbreaking, really just spoke to me. Kuroe struggles with learning to feel and express love and the weight that emotion carries. He assumes he's never loved anyone until he was with Sonogi, but that takes on a whole new meaning when he recalls that he knew Sonogi as a baby. He realizes he has had the ability to love within him all along, having loved baby Sonogi first. It's just such a heartrending realization, and I loved it. With all that being said, I, for some reason, really like this. It has so many elements that go against my preferences, but at the same time, it's so unique and odd that I can't help being intrigued by it. It is in no way a favorite, but this work alone sent me on a spiral checking out all of Chifuyu's other work that had been officially licensed and localized, so take that as you will. I would not recommend this to most people. It's weird, a bit of a whirlwind, and very, very dark, but there's just something about it that just speaks to me. If you're looking for something really unique, both in art and story, I'd say this is worth giving a shot. So, have you read Kuroe and the Garden of Feminine Pleasures? If so, what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you not? Let me know and comment below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Bye!